Welcome back to Boring Conversation. I'm Jesse, your host, and with me today is Jacob. Say hi, Jacob.
Hey, how you doing today?
And Maeve.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
And Adam.
Flash, 100-yard dash.
Nice. And this is Boring Conversation.
Welcome to Boring Conversation, a Malifaux podcast.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. So, it's been a little while since we've recorded. We wanted to wait until after CaptainCon so that we could kind of share our thoughts on the event. And we've all had a little bit of time to kind of decompress, think things over, and we're all here to talk about it. So, as I'd mentioned, with me today, I have actually four guests. This is the first time, or four guests, three guests. This is the first time that all four of us have gotten on the show at the same time. I've got myself, I've got Jacob, Adam, and Maeve, as mentioned in the intros. So before we get going, Maeve, you've got a new thing going, don't you? You just started up a stream recently, right?
I did actually. I'm running the TTRPG City of Mist on my Twitch stream, MX Maeve. We record every other Sunday, so we just recorded this past Sunday, which is the 20th. So the next one will be up in 2 weeks. It's a lot of fun, and you should definitely check it out.
Awesome. I've actually never heard of City of Mist. Do you want to give us just like a quick little, 10-second blurb on the system?
It's a really cool game. It's basically like a mix of sort of Sin City style noir with like Dresden Files urban fantasy, where every character is both a normal everyday person, but they have like an awakened myth or legend inside of them. So one of our characters, for instance, is a union worker, but he carries the myth of John Henry. And they are, going through the city, solving some mysteries, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we include a link to the stream in the show notes. So
Awesome.
If any of you folks are into checking out live play streams, then definitely give it a listen.
That sounds very American Gods.
Kind of. It is very. You can tell that it's got some grab from that.
Nice. It's been a little while since I've actually sat and watched a live stream, but I've been meaning to do it a little bit more. The times that I've watched the Third Floor Wars stream, I've always really enjoyed, and I'll definitely give yours a watch too.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun playing games with Craig as well.
Yeah, for real. So I guess probably the most important segment, according to some of the podcast, is the What Are You Drinking segment. We got a whopping 4 people to get through, so I'll go ahead and start today. I never start. So I am drinking a Dublin City Brewing Company Irish Stout. It's a 4.2% classic dry Irish Stout. It's going to be very similar to Guinness Stout. As per the name, Dublin City is actually from Dublin. It's another Irish brewery, and they're just kind of brewing their own take on the dry Irish Stout style. I find this one to be a little bit roastier and has a little bit more body than a typical Guinness. I think if I had to pick between the two, I'd say this one might even be my favorite. So
I'll definitely have to check it out. You know how much I love the stouts.
Yes. And as I was saying before the stream, I've been working on the call sheet and stuff, so I'm already halfway done with my beer. So I have another one on deck. So when you guys hear it crack, yeah. So Jacob, are you drinking anything tonight?
I'm drinking water tonight.
Water.
Yeah,
nice.
We'll get to that, won't we?
Mm-hmm. We will get to that. True story. And Adam, how about you?
Unfortunately, I'm on call tonight, as just about every night this week. So tonight I'm drinking the sad tears of a clown, and that's about it. So
fair enough.
We're going to be really boring.
Yeah, and Maeve, I think
Well,
that you said that you were just partaking of water this evening as well.
Mountain Dew at
Oh
the moment.
no.
I am still hungover from the night before, the night or 2 nights ago, where I drank way too much of a bottle of peach margarita.
Nice. Nice. So I'll make sure that I get through this beer and get into the next one as quick as I can for all you folks. And
Thanks,
on your
appreciate
behalf.
it.
Yeah, I'm just looking out for you. All right, so we get to start recording again because we noticed that Jake was hooked up to the wrong microphone, so he should sound vastly better now.
Should I just you do a little bit of magic? I'll just say what I said before, and you can splice it in, make it sound seamless, right? You got time for that?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, no, definitely not. All right, so let's see here. So really, what are we here to talk about? So I already said that we're going to be doing some CaptainCon recap from both the MCCI and Booty and Plunder, but with 4 guests and not really wanting to rush through the details on all of our games, I thought that what we could do instead is maybe give a quick recap of how the events went for us. Maybe each highlight one game that we really enjoyed over the course of the weekend, our favorite game, so to speak. And then after that, I really want to kind of talk to you guys about how you feel like the meta is going to develop now that we have all the Malifaux Burns content and some of the trends that we saw during the course of the event. So kind of before we get into that deeper dive stuff, let's just talk a little bit about the events as a whole. So obviously, for anybody who hadn't followed, we had 2 events. We had the MCCI, or Malifaux Content Creators Invitational. We had 10 teams of 2, so a total of 20 players from all walks of Malifaux content creation. We had podcasts, YouTube channels, blogs. We even had some newer entries to the content creation landscape, specifically Goonhammer, which just started publishing Malifaux content. Joined us to fill in a gap for a team that wasn't able to participate. It was great to have them there. After the MCCI on Friday, we had Booty and Plunder, which was a 2-day, 50-stone Gaining Grounds tournament in the typical fashion. We ended up having a total with the ringer included of 34 players. So pretty respectable turnout. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on was for the Malifaux Content Creators Invitational, what did you think of the pairing process? So just to give listeners a quick little recap, each team would be set to a row of tables. Row of tables would be like row A, B, C, so on and so forth. And then each set of tables would have table 1 and table 2. There would be a shared scheme pool between the 2 tables, but then each individual table would have its own strategy and deployment. The team that was in the lead would select one master and put it on a table of their choice. The team in second place on that set would then choose one of their 2 masters to pair into the master that was just selected, and then the remaining 2 unselected masters would go to the other table. So I know that prior to the event, there were a couple of folks that were concerned that the team that was in the lead or the team that was in second place would have a significant advantage over the other. I personally didn't really see that pan out, but what did you guys think?
I think it went pretty well. I think being a 2-person team event, there's really no other way to do it. But as far as bad matchups or anything like that, I think the way to go with having the team that is the higher seed placing first is probably the better way to do it, because that second team, I think, does get a slight advantage as far as being able to counter that pick. But considering they're the lower seed, that's what really balances out competitively, I think.
I think it was really clever. And I liked seeing the different strategies that each team took. So, like when Jeremy and I were talking about it early on, what we just decided was we weren't really just concerned with the matchup as we were concerned with like what models we brought could do which pool. So we had matched it up to the pools beforehand, and I don't think we ever came across a matchup that we were just like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have brought we shouldn't have brought our specific faction into it. Now, there was definitely a game where I felt like I shouldn't have brought my the master that I did into it, but that was a different story altogether. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed the strategy and thought process. I know that Landon and Longton very much played towards the meta, so they really played that game of like, what master are these people bringing, what faction are these people bringing, and we're going to play against the faction. And it obviously worked out well for them.
Yeah, I mean, so just to recap the results before we go any further, Landon and Longton playing for Team Badfoe Haku did come in first. The Bayou Breakdown with
That's
Maeve
me.
and Jeremy, that's you, came in second, and then Boring Conversation, being me and Adam, came in third. And yeah, I would say, just in terms of my thoughts on how the pairing process played out, I mean, there were a couple of games, or a couple of rounds rather, round 2 in particular, where Adam was playing, I believe, Pandora that round. And there was one of the tables that he was really concerned that he wasn't going to be able to play effectively into. So while he ended up playing into a master that he wasn't really that keen on, we did feel like it was the better call than putting him into a really disadvantageous table and strat.
And how'd that work out?
It didn't work out great for you. I won my game though, so that was good.
So I'm curious if any of you decided on whether or not to put someone on a table or keep them off a table based on the terrain. Was there ever a situation where you were like, oh, I really can't move around this stuff, or you can, or something like that?
So in round 1, we were playing against, I believe it was Malifaux University. I believe that was our pair of round 1, right? Yeah. So table 2 in that round was really, really bad for me. It had a lot of big blocking terrain in the middle, and I was playing Ma with a sizable shooting crew. So it would have actually given my opponent a lot of places to hide. Adam was playing a primarily melee crew. You played Hinamatsu that round, right, Adam? I think so.
Yeah. It was puppets round 1, correct?
Yeah, puppets round 1. So he was going to have a somewhat easier time working around that than I was. There were a few other things that came into play where he ended up playing on that table, but yeah, I think that was probably the one round that it really mattered for us.
I don't think it mattered for us too much. We went from pretty mobile crews to kind of begin with. I played the kids most of the weekend, and Jeremy played Marcus, Colette, and May. So he had like a lot of movement shenanigans going. So the terrain itself didn't really play into us very big. If I'd brought Bass, then it might have changed things, but I wanted to play the creepy kids all weekend, so that's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, you played Nexus 2 literally every round.
Everyone but
weekend,
the 2 games that I played Jedza.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jedza.
And I lost both of those games, so,
Yeah, so getting into Booty and Plunder. For Booty and Plunder, Jake ended up joining us as well. He hopped in. He just wasn't able to play during the MCCI. So for Booty and Plunder, the standings played out with Landon from Badfoe Haku in first place. Adam ended up taking second place. And then Longton from Badfoe Haku took third place. I played as the ringer that round.
You got that backwards, Jesse.
What?
Wait, no, you don't.
No, I don't.
Never mind. You're good.
Fucking liar.
Landon and Longton, I keep confusing them.
Yeah, it's okay. I could call him David Longton, but he'd get really annoyed with me if I did that. So, and then Maeve ended up finishing pretty much middle of the pack. I think you came in like 23rd place.
Yeah.
And then Jake, unfortunately.
Well, so here's what happened. I was attacked by Brewmaster. I accumulated 45 poison, and I died on Sunday morning.
Oh, no.
Jake,
Oh, no.
Jake, I have one question for you.
Go.
Are you a werewolf?
I was a werewolf. The last thing I remember is being a werewolf, and I think Adam was the other werewolf, and I was like, "This is awesome! This is going to be the best round." We were playing werewolf, by the way, at like 1:30 in the morning, and I thought this is going to be a great round. We're going to fool all of them, and then I just had a moment where I realized, okay, I'm going to throw up in about 30 seconds. So I stood up from the table, casually walked out of the room, and gave the old Irish goodbye, and was never seen again.
Yeah, if you did the whole what are you drinking shtick over on that night, the answer would have been everything.
Yeah. So Jake was not the only person that dropped. We did actually have 3 drops from the tournament on day 2, but that's okay because it actually meant that we had an even number of players, and I could focus on running the event. And that was kind of important because we actually had a pretty tight schedule day 2. We had some folks with flights out and stuff. So in the end, it worked out.
And how many of those were booze related?
2 at least. The third one I can't say for sure, but 2 of them were definitely booze related. Yeah. I think karaoke played a part in one of them.
Yeah. There's videos of that.
Yeah. So if you want a sneak preview of what happened in relation to that drop, you can go check out the Goonhammer blog article, which is extraordinarily well written, by the way. I'm actually going to post a link to it in the show notes because I'm very, very impressed with what a good job Sam and the Goonhammer team did with the tournament write-up.
Sam was an excellent player too. Like I have to give it to him because I hadn't really like ever interacted with Sam at all. So and he's not really like so far been super active with the Bayou community. So this was my first interaction, but he played some very solid games. The only reason he didn't podium, I think, was just because of just strength of schedule, maybe. Like,
we're gonna get to the whole podium thing. That's going to be one of the first thoughts that I have on this. So
yeah, it looks like he came in 4th and lost 1 game, won 4 games, lost 1, and then at MCCI he won all of his games.
And the first round of day 2 really just threw everything for a loop. That was so hilarious.
Yeah, I mean,
there were some pretty wonky pairings. Go ahead, Adam.
Sorry. He's the one that gave me my biggest loss of the weekend. Actually, it was that awful Zip versus Pandora game. Just one of those situations where whoever's going to get their shtick off first is going to win, and then he just like zipped me in the face, and I was like not in position. Yeah. It was just downhill from there. He's a very good player. He's very smart.
Absolutely, especially because he's not really been playing for too terribly long, right? Isn't that whole like meta like only like
they're fairly new? Yeah, I think that they only picked up the game in 2021. I'm not sure at what point, but yeah, they get their reps in. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're new. They're obviously not new to wargaming in general, right. But they're new to Malifaux. So
right. I think the plan is that Jake, Adam, and I are all going to be going up there this Saturday actually for a tournament. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Very cool.
So getting into the standings and kind of how Sam ended up in 4th place, I think one of my biggest takeaways for this event is how incredibly important every single point is at a really competitive event like this. So
absolutely,
for anybody who hasn't taken a look at the standings, the first place player, Landon and Adam, both had 13 total TP. And Landon ended up winning out by a healthy difference of 6 points, which is pretty sizable. But then once you get down to the next 3 players, we had 3rd, 4th, and 5th place all at 12 TP. And Longton and Sam were both at 10 diff. The only thing that separated them was a total BP difference of 3 points for Longton. So that's one of those things where, like, if you're really shooting for top table, every single point on both your and your opponent's side counts. It's we posted the tournament results after each round, and at one point, a few people on AWP posted that they just couldn't believe how tight the field was.
Yeah, and it was so funny too, because like, and Schemes and Song talked about it too, but like, at the end of day 3. We had a whole bunch of people that were 2-1 or 2-0-1, And like I was looking at it that night, and I was kind of agonizing over it. I had already I was already knew I wasn't uh, gonna hit table, but Jeremy had a really good chance of it. Um, and so like that first thing that morning, I walked down and I looked over at Brian, and I was like, Brian, if you beat Jeff, everybody has a chance. If you don't beat Jeff, Jeff gets in and locks out like the top two positions. So like it's your job to beat Jeff to make this tournament more interesting. And then Landon tied. And when Landon tied his game, like everything just went insane because that last round really was up to anybody. If Landon had lost, like if it was such an up in the air fifth round. It was very cool and very like interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the most interesting, one of the most interesting 5-day tournaments in terms of like how the rounds played out. It was very atypical in that regard. Like the ties on top table, and the scores being so tight made for. I mean, every round was very interesting to do the scoring for, to say the least.
Yeah, I know. I know. At the end of my first game, when I had tied with Brian, I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess that's it. I guess I'm out." Like there's my tie. And then when day two came around, and it was like, "Dude, if you just win out and you score high enough, you can win now." I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess we're back in." Like
Yeah.
I was actually talking with Jake, was my third round opponent for that, and we were talking about like the different plays into it. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, I do have a tie. I guess I could play for third, and then it just turned into a complete mess.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
I was doing okay on Saturday, and then Sunday I just I don't know. I was tired. I was just like my brain just I went to play Owen, and Owen's such a good player. We've always had really good games. And he dropped Terra, and I was just like, I don't know how to beat this. Like I just genuinely don't know how to beat this. And then like I miss on like turn 2, I misplayed like mismeasured 2 moves, and I was like half an inch away from getting to the symbol marker on both of them, which would have been my point for the symbol, and I would have been able to score my second scheme. And I was just like, yep, cool, this is done. Like it was just so bad.
Yeah, and that tight scoring, it stayed all the way really through the top 12. Yeah, I mean like for right up through place 8, which was Chris Leopard, we had 3 players at 10 points, and then the diff was 6, then 5, then 4. I mean, we're talking like real tight. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I know exactly what I did wrong from get-go. I mean, after that first game, I was all gears ahead. What I did wrong that first game was I just played one master. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit later.
Oh, we sure are. So before we get to that, another thing that I'd kind of noticed was that I feel like the faction breakdown across the event was it really followed with what I expected it to. The only thing that I was a little bit surprised about was that there weren't quite as many Reser players as I would have expected, because I know they're a fairly common faction in this area. But I mean, when we look at it, we had 8 Explorers players, which is not at all surprising. I mean, they're the new hotness. One thing that was kind of cool is, kind of the chat online, so to speak, is that Explorers, some folks say that Explorers aren't as good as everybody says they are. They're not finishing top 10 in any events, yada, yada, yada. And that, I can't speak to all metas, and I can't speak to the Vassalverse. But I mean, in this tournament, 3 of the 8 Explorers players did end up top 10. Now, they're all very good players. I don't think that they were just riding on the strengths of the faction. We're talking, David Longton, Jeff Mansker, and Chris Leopard. So all very strong players. But it wasn't so lopsided as to imply that there's some sort of an issue, either that Explorers are weaker than they appear to be or stronger than they should be, at least in my opinion.
Well,
what do you guys think?
I think if you look at who was played in Explorers, you're going to see a lot of the same masters.
Exactly, yeah. You're not seeing all of Explorers. You're seeing Jedza, Nexus, Ivan.
I mean, we did have Anya in the top 10 as well. Chris played Anya. Jeff played Anya as well. So I mean, really, it was 3 masters. They were playing Jedza 1 and 2, Nexus 1 and 2, Ivan 1, and Anya 1 and 2.
And then Feli played Maxine 2.
Yep.
And he played Anya 2.
Yep.
Like really, the only masters you're just flat out not, and I think he played Cooper in his last round.
I believe he did.
Like,
yeah.
You're not seeing Bass and you're not seeing McCabe, and that's not surprising because those two are just not up to. I just don't think they're up to par, really. I think Bass loses a whole lot when he loses LLC, and when he comes over to Explorers. And I don't know why more people aren't playing Maxine too. She is a monster.
Yeah.
Holy cow, she is a monster.
Okay, just real quick. So I counted up the out of the top 10, there were 3 players that played Explorers. 5 games apiece is 15 games. 12 of those games, I just added it up, is some kind of Jedza or some kind of Nexus.
Interesting though, pull down to the bottom. So I played Jedza and Nexus as well, and I was kind of in the middle there. But the bottom 3 played Bass, Cooper, McCabe, Ivan.
Interesting.
So, the masters that I kind of look at as like not so great, except for Ivan. The one guy played Ivan the whole time, and I'm really, I'd love to, like, it doesn't look like his games were they were all looked pretty close, except for one game that was a pretty hard blowout, but I don't know if that's just unfamiliarity with him, but I think Ivan was really strong pre-errata. So, but yeah, the rest of the players are playing Bass and Cooper and McCabe, which I feel like is a fairly meh pick as well. So,
yeah, I mean, it'd be the same thing as if I, playing Bayou, which I consider to be a fairly strong faction, went in and decided that I was going to play, Ulix and Wong 1 and,
right.
That kind of thing all weekend.
Right.
I mean,
you could dark horse it all weekend long if you want.
The other question, which we can't really tell from this data, is how many of these players are also playing Ivan as a second master.
That's true. I know David played round 3, round 4, and round 5. I'm pretty sure that Longton played Nexus 2 and Ivan.
Yeah, he actually said that, I think, on the Schemes and Stone podcast.
Yeah, he and I had been talking, because, I mean, obviously we're both playing Nexus 2.
Yeah.
I think I played Nexus 2 every round but 2 rounds for the entire weekend. And I think he did roughly the same. I know he played Ivan once, I think, in the MCCI.
I think that Nexus 2 Ivan and Ivan combo is going to be the new Nicodem of 3E. It's going to be the stupid thing that every new player does because some good players, such as David, take it and do really well with it.
Listen, I was the jerk that played the Nexus kids, and I played the kids and Cooper 2 in one game, and then I played the kids and McCabe 2 in my last game of day 1. And I will give my opponent all the credit for not losing his crap, because I put the upgrades on the nests, and then basically I got 1 or 2 parasites on Marcus and the kitty, and it was anytime he went to attack, it was stat 3. And I was like, okay, I'm not scared of these guys. And like he went to swing in, and I was like, okay, I'll remove parasite. And he's like, oh crap! And he just instantly had to switch gears and go to like, how do I win this without attacking people? Because
he didn't
kill a single mob.
I'm sure we'll get more into it, but having 2 masters is dumb. Having 4 masters is ridiculously stupid. Like, it shouldn't be a thing.
I agree. It is something. It is something.
Yeah. Just to note, because I just want to bust Jesse's balls real quick. I looked at the Bayou players, and the 3 Bayou players that we had, not including the Ringer. 15 games, obviously, 3 players, 5 games each. One of those games was not some kind of Zip or Ma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things were weighted pretty heavily. in the Zip and Ma. This
Really
particular
surprised
tournament.
Brew 2 was not on the table more. He is so good.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to, but I didn't want to take Brew 2 as the ringer because he's kind of rude. And frankly, I don't really have a ton of reps with him to the point that I feel really comfortable bringing him to a tournament.
Yeah.
And especially because he's kind of complex and that first turn can be a little brain bendy. So I chose not to take him.
Someone had Brew too. It must have been as a second master
No,
because
he had him on on round 1 of the tournament.
oh, okay.
He played him versus Daw, and
Yep.
he was playing Doug, and yeah, I think he got a first turn kill on Daw, and it was just kind of downhill from
Yeah,
there.
I was talking to Doug about that, and he's like, "My brain stopped working. I took Daw 1." I'm like, "Yeah, because if you had taken Daw 2, you would have destroyed him."
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, Brutu's so good. He's so good. He will probably see some work here eventually.
He's one of those masters that's really good, but he needs a lot of. You need to really know what you're doing. You need to
I
know
agree.
all of the rules, and you need to know all the little tiny interactions that happen every single time anyone does anything.
Mhm.
So it just requires a lot of paying attention. It's kind of like playing Crossroads 7. Like you have to pay attention to everything your opponent's doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a lot. Unless you're playing like Ophelia or Ma 1, that's Bayou. Bayou, in order to like
Yeah.
get the full advantage of all the insanity that Bayou does, you have to be a game expert, really, because they have so many little interactions that make everything work properly. This coming from someone who played Sommer for 2 years straight.
So, I mean, we talked a little bit about the double master thing. So, you know what? Let's just get right into it. So, some of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about are going to be just like post tournament thoughts on, Malifaux Burns, how it's going to affect the meta, if double masters are a good idea because we saw a lot of it at this tournament, that kind of thing. So before we do that, though, just kind of wrapping up things on the top 10. So in terms of that top 10 placements, were there any surprises for any of you guys in there?
As far as factions or people?
Yeah, factions.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised to not see a Reser in there.
I think 2 of our Rezzers dropped on day 2.
2 of the Rezzers died.
That's because we only had one Reser player left at the start of second day.
I think it was more surprising just how few Reser players there were at the tournament. There were only 3 of us for Booty and Plunder, and there were none for MCCI.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, there were 3 explorers in the top 10, considering, I guess some people are saying that they're weak, but I don't know how it's possible when you have Nexus, playing
I
it
I
idle.
actually agree, especially now post errata. The thing about explorers is they have 2 or had 2 really, really good game breaking options. Nexus is an MPE and a game breaker, and I'll stand by that 100%. I think that they were, especially Nexus 1, was just not fun to play against, and it wasn't really fun to play, which is why I played the kids instead of Nexus 1. I just didn't enjoy it. And Ivan was ball busting too. Um, Other than that, they don't have good minions. They don't have huge amounts of mobility options. Trying to figure out how the hell you score symbols in in an explorer's crew is super hard. There's just not a lot of great like reach out and grab marker options. And I think post errata we're gonna see a lot of changes. We're gonna see a lot of mix ups, and we're gonna see more of these other masters like Anya show up because um, it's kind of balanced. I think it's going to balance them out to be about middle of the pack is my like hot take prediction.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're definitely going to do another episode focused on the errata too, and how we think it's going to change the meta. I'm looking forward to talking about that one. But I think you're on the right track there. I definitely think you're going to see more Anya. You're going to see more Probably more Cooper too, because I do think he has legs for sure. But that's another episode.
Because I mean, think about it. Like now, so like looking at these guys, I am willing to bet that Longton and Jeff took Beeb and Calypso almost every round. I'm willing to bet they had the Archivist almost every round. And like just that combo right there is such a huge like game swinging event. And then the Emissary, like, you know, all of those got hit in the errata. So I'm willing to bet that'll shift things pretty heavily.
Because you needed to, because it was starting to look like Explorers All Stars.
Yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree. I 100% agree with that. And I think that it's really cool because now that Nexus 1 is down, I get to feel better about playing Nexus kids because I love them. I love the way they play. I like the little interactions they can do. There's so many pivot points in that crew that they're just very fun to play without really like setting your opponent off into like the tilt land of NPE that Nexus 1 did. Because they're also easily you can deal with them. If you focus down a Nexus kid, they're dead. Like,
yeah, I know for me personally, like I love the aesthetic of Ivan, and I love the aesthetic of Nexus. When I saw Nexus was going to be like, you know, body snatching bugs, I was like, I am all in on this. But then like the power level on them was so high that I just refused to even consider playing them.
That's
until
fair.
They got taken down a notch.
I felt the same exact way, Adam. Like I love the way they look, and I immediately wanted to get them and paint them. But you know, I saw everyone's going to play them because they're the new hotness and they're super powerful. And I was just like, no, I don't want to be like just another one of the obnoxious Ivan players, Jesse.
Shut your mouth.
My top 10 pick that I think that I was really surprised in, and I know that poor Adam Rogers had like just come back because like I met him in the airport and he's like, yeah, I haven't played a game in like months. I'm blowing the dust off my models. But I really expected Guild to like the new Malifaux Burns Guild models are so good. I really expected to see them pull ahead, at least be in the top half. So that was kind of my surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, so, you know, getting into the Malifaux Burns stuff before we get into the double masterpiece. So, I mean, I feel like we saw a pretty good mix of original and second and Malifaux Burns versions of the Masters. I mean, there were a few that played, you know, primarily Malifaux Burns stuff, like Landon, for instance. I mean, he played nothing but new master titles for Booty and Plunder, and I think that's all he played for the MCCI.
I mean, he pretty much played Lynch too, right?
Yeah, he played Lynch 2 all 3 rounds of the MCCI, and he played Yoko 2 round 2 of Booty and Plunder, and then Lynch 2 all the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he was kind of the exception, aside from you, Maeve, because you just played Nexus 2 all weekend. But, I mean, for the most part, we saw a good mix. I mean, like Kyle Bodie, from Schemes and Stones. He did play a lot of Dreamer, but he played both Dreamer 1 and Dreamer 2. And he broke out Nekama as well, like old Nekama 1. And I believe he played Pandora 2 in the MCCI as well. So
he did. He played that against Jeremy.
But what did you guys think in terms of the matchups that you came into? Did you see a lot of Malifaux Burns? Did you see less than you expected? I mean, what do you think?
So, to your point, Jesse, I think that speaks really highly of Malifaux Burns and the balance of it. You know, that we're not seeing everyone just play the new stuff. Like, you know, that's a really good sign. I think for the most part, I saw a pretty good mix in my games. There's a few things out there that are going to need to be readjusted. A few of them just were. And, you know, like Jacob Lynch is definitely one of them. And I think it actually, the Malifaux Burn stuff leads into the dual master thing, because I think a lot of the new masters just pair really, really well with each other. or with some of the old masters, you're adding twice as many options. So there's twice as many crazy dual master lists out there now. So I do think the two subjects are kind of related. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty healthy mix. And I think that's really a really good sign for just the future of the game.
Yeah, I really expected things to be weighted extremely heavily towards Malifaux Burns Masters. And while I'm not adding up all the numbers, like I'm sure Adam probably is right now, I really feel like it was more balanced than I expected it to be. But what about you, Maeve? Or did you?
I mean, I played Malifaux Burns models, pretty much everyone, but like the one round I played Jedza. And I think that was the one round. Well, I went up against Marcus 2 one round, and I went up against Maxine 2 one round. And so I played against a lot of Malifaux or of one models. I think no, that's not true because John G was playing Shenlong too, because I didn't know what it did, and I just kind of let him do his thing, and I was like, okay. He goes, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and I was like, you got it, bud. Sure,
I feel like
we're
that's kind of
good.
the way
We're good.
Shenlong one plays too.
Yeah, like I was like, okay, what? I looked at the board and I was like, okay, Fuhatsu is the threat. I'll tie Fuhatsu up. I don't care about the rest. Go do what you got to do. Um, but I felt like it was pretty like I didn't feel like any of those first edition models or whatever the non-title models like didn't threaten me at all. Like clearly, like the Karai one kicked my butt in the last round. Terra absolutely terrorized me in the fourth round. So yeah, they still pack a lot of power. I think they still I think a couple of them need a little boost to get ahead, and we've already seen some of that start happening with Raspy and Wong and the errata. So I'm excited to see them kind of lift it up a little bit, and I'm sure the things that need to be pulled down will eventually kind of be brought down. We just this weekend was the Wild West, right? Like you didn't know what to expect. You didn't know coming in like even when your opponent declares master, then you have to go, well, what are they playing? And then you have to decide, does it matter what they're playing? Like, is it, if they pick Zip 1 or if they pick Zip 2, does it make a difference in what I bring? So I thought that was really cool. Like, the one loss I had to Feely, if he had brought Maxine 1, I think that game would have been much, much better in my favor. But Maxine 2 is a terrifying monster, and you can't play against Maxine 2 the same way you play against Maxine 1.
Yeah, there were a few of the Malifaux Burns Masters that even made it into the top 10 list that I frankly didn't expect to see there. And that just goes to show that either I'm a bad judge of what's a good what's a good model, or I just don't fully understand the kind of holistic view of a keyword, which is something that I kind of preach a lot on like Bayou. For instance, we were taking a look at some of the erratas, and we won't get into that right now. And sometimes I feel like people view, especially folks that don't play the faction or the keyword, they look at an errata or they look at a new model and they view it just on its own. They don't really take it into like a holistic view of the entire keyword or even the faction. And there's a lot of that knowledge that I just don't have. But what I'm getting at is, like, for Owen, who came in ninth place. I mean, Owen's a great player, and unless my notes are wrong, he played Parker 2 rounds. And I know when I look at Parker 2, I'm like, I mean, he doesn't look as good as Parker 1. And there's a lot
Why
of
would you play that?
yeah, and like there's a lot of hate for him on the interwebs. But obviously, he played him 2 rounds and he won both games. So like, there must be something there that I'm not getting. So that makes me want to go back and reread the cards and try and figure out, what he was doing there.
I mean, until this weekend, I had never really heard anybody else talk positively about Nexus 2 compared to Nexus 1. And both David and I were on the same like wavelength about how much fun and interesting things you could do. Now, granted, we were also dicking around with extra masters as well, but like I played them without. I played the entire first day of the MCCI without them, so without the extra masters as well. So, um, but yeah, I think until you get in, like we still we're 3-4 months into Malifaux Burns, and this is the second big tournament that we've seen stateside. So I think we'll all come out with a completely different perspective by the time Nova gets around and we're looking at the end of the season.
I saw us not a ton, but a surprising amount of Marcus too.
Yeah.
At both Booty and Plunder and the MCCI. I mean, I think he's cool, but he doesn't strike me as a very competitive take. More of like just this is a fun master.
Jeremy likes him a lot, and I can't fully speak for Jeremy, but except for the conversations we've had, obviously, like traveling back and forth, and playing against each other a lot. But Marcus too does a lot of hidden things that hurts some very popular masters. His aura of not being able to place in it.
Oh yeah, it's like a mini gravity well.
Yeah, and him combined with him having leap and just his pretty surprisingly good damage that can just pop out of him out of nowhere. It's resource intensive to do it, but Marcus can kind of get into the middle of your crew, scalpel out a very important model, and leave you on the back foot with 2 kitty cats come into play. I think he's one of those masters where if you let him do what he wants to do, he's gonna hurt you. But he's also still fairly easy to deal with if you know how to deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was looking, after Jake mentioned that, I started looking back through the results, and I think, unless I got some results misrecorded, I don't think there was a single Marcus 1 game all weekend.
You've got Jeremy marked as Marcus 1 on round 1, but I know he played Marcus 2 that round.
There we go. Oh, yeah, Marcus 1. I'll just change that to Marcus 2 right now, because it's a Google Doc, and I can do that.
Yeah.
Marcus 2. There you go.
I think Colette 2 is another master to really look out for. She is brutal on symbols.
I'll be playing her on Saturday.
Yeah, so little side note here. So Jake has pretty much been a a Resurrectionist player since he started in 3rd edition. And he recently branched out into Arcanists, and I'm kind of already wishing that he had just stayed in Neverborn, even though it would mean I'd have to deal with Karai more often.
Dude, and masters that we don't see enough of, Mei Fang.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Well, and Jeremy's been playing Mei too, and when Jake does start playing Mei 2, I'm really sorry about your Brew 2 list.
That's what I've been playing. Yeah.
It's awful. It's such an awful matchup. She just turns off so much crap. It's so frustrating. And then she's practically unkillable, which is even more annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, good times. Thanks. That's a little preview of my future 6 months to a year. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
2 against me.
I have entered the Matrix, and I have started working on Sandeep 2. And that is a brain-busting crew.
There's a lot. There's a lot going on. That's sort of like the Brewmaster 2 thing, where you do one thing and it just cascades into a bunch of other things that happen, and you just need so much bookkeeping.
Well, and me, I am the consummate mad scientist, so I am always looking for what's the weirdest, craziest thing to really put this. I've looked at Cassandra because she can copy Banasuva's bonus to make Sandeep take another action, and then she can and then there's so many weird ways to get extra AP out, and I think the only saving grace of that crew is Sandeep's extra AP is not game breaking.
Yeah. Cassandra, I think we were just recently talking about this. She's too good. She's so good. She's one of those models that you can put into any crew. So I think that's a problem. That kind of goes against, I think, what they want in Malifaux. They being the designers, like she just has automatic synergy with every single crew, and it's even better now.
But she's 11 points out of keyword, so
No.
she's 10 points out of keyword.
No, she's 8 base.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that is a thing. That is a thing.
It's a thing.
And she's even better now with the errata, because the errata clarified that if she copies someone's bonus action, it doesn't count as her bonus action.
Yeah, she still gets her free bonus action. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cute.
So she's basically always a 3 AP character who can copy a bunch of really broken tactical actions from other keywords.
Yeah, it's pretty bananas. So I think Adam may have returned, but I guess the only other point that I would make on that before we turn it over to him and his data that he has tabulated is it seems like this whole like copying abilities mechanic is one of those things that keeps cropping up in the game. And I don't want to like soapbox about it, but so when third edition came out, they had a couple of models that could copy actions from other models. They had like changelings and terracotta warriors and Agent 46 and the doppelganger. And at this point, the only one that's left that can still do those things in its original form is the doppelganger, because they've realized that, like, just like
the
you
kid,
on
the
changelings,
Malifaux kid that no one ever takes,
right, and
still
Malifaux
has
kid.
just like you.
Right, and I think people should take the Malifaux kid because it's a 3-stone significant model that has just like you. But that's another story. So basically, like, changelings now no longer have it. Terracotta warriors no longer have it. They had to adjust Agent 46 because he was so bad that he was messing up the design space for an entire faction. They put in Doc McMorning and Sanitary, and then they had to errata him before he even came out because it was messing up an entire faction again. Like, I feel like this whole copying abilities thing is just problematic.
I agree.
Yeah.
It makes sense for the doppelganger because that's kind of the doppelganger's whole shtick. But it's also done it's done in a different way. Just very rough numbers. I was tabulating up the number of people who played, the number of games that played version 1 masters and the number of games that played version 2. And just in rough numbers, it looks like it was 90 players played version 1 masters and 70 games were played with version 2 masters. However, that can be very disingenuous because, like, for myself, I know personally, my main master, my leader, was a version 1 master, but my second master was a version 2 master. So, I mean, take those numbers with a grain of salt. I mean, it probably evens out exactly down the middle if you consider the number of second masters taken, etc. But that's what you got. So,
well, and there's the new factor, right? Like, that's one thing that you always, and that's one thing with explorers too. Like, we gotta, one of the things is that the pandemic really kind of screwed up how Malifaux works. So when explorers got dropped and then the pandemic hit, and a lot of people have had these models and have yet to actually got to put them on the table. So, you get a big event and you're like, damn it, I'm bringing these cool new models that I got. And I think Malifaux Burns is kind of in that same spot of like, it's new. And sometimes you just want to play the new stuff. Like, you just want to do the new thing because it's cool.
yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not against playing like version 2 masters. And then, like, not only that, the best way you're going to get reps in, as far as if you're playing competitively, is going to be playing those things into tournaments. So I mean, you're going to have to play them if you have any intent of trying to learn them or just trying to at least feel them out. Because God forbid you go against them and you don't know what they do.
Yeah.
I think that I have less of a problem with version 2 masters than I do the other thing we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I feel like we're probably going to... It's kind of weird because we're probably going to feel like... excuse me. I feel like we are probably going to see more of the version 2 masters be played as the models release. Even though they're fairly easy to, proxy, either with masters on different base sizes or what have you. But I feel like a lot of it is going to kind of balance out over the next, I would say, probably like 4 to 6 months. And I'm hoping that things are going to be pretty mature by the time Nova and like the kind of autumn con season kickoff. I know that in terms of the Malifaux Burns Masters, there are a few of them that really appeal to me within the factions that I play, more so than the original Masters. So, like, you know, I don't need to go through the whole list of them, but there were a few that are real standouts, like Wong 2, even after his, Wong 1's been adjusted and errated. Ulix 2 is probably the big one. I feel like it's probably in Bayou the biggest gap between V1 and V2 Masters in terms of competitive play. So I'm looking forward to getting him on the table quite a bit. But it's not, I don't feel like for me, it's even in either of the two factions that I play actively, an obvious split between the V1 and V2. Like, I feel like for the most part, I can comfortably switch between the two versions of the Masters based on the needs of the scheme and strat pool. I mean, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that stuff?
That's actually what I love about the second versions of the Masters is that if you wanted to, you could solo a keyword, and just switching out some of these Masters changes the whole dynamic of the crew. But you I mean, if you look at Nekama, version 1 Nekama is very, I'm going to punch you in the face, I'm rushing in, it's very Alpha Strike. Version 2, there's a lot more subtlety with it. It's still going to punch you in the face. It's just not going to be her that's doing it, but it changes the dynamic of that crew. And it actually, I like how a lot of these version 2 Masters really incentivize you taking some of those models that you wouldn't see with the version 1 Master.
I agree with that. Very much so.
Yeah, that's definitely the case in Bayou as well.
Yeah, like look at monks, the drunken river monks or whatever they're called.
Fermented river monks.
Yeah, fermented river monks. They never saw play in Brewmaster 1. In Brewmaster 2, they are probably one of the most annoying models you will ever see across the table.
What about you, Jake? How are you feeling with the whole Malifaux Burns? And either of your two factions.
I agree with what Adam was saying about, I think that they're really designed well to change the way a keyword works. I think with Rezzers, I love them all. There's none that I think are bad. The closest one I would say to being bad would be Molly. And that's kind of just because Molly 1 is so good. But I mean, I can see myself playing any of them. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, should I play Karai 1?
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say Mei Feng, May 1 and May 2, I think those are probably just about the most different of many of the Masters that I've looked at. I mean, you go from Mei Feng 1, the combat all-star carrying the crew until she dies, to Mei Feng 2, which is really just ramping the whole crew into overdrive. I find that a lot of the Malifaux Burns Masters are just sort of like alternate versions of the originals with a similar play style. So I really appreciate the ones that are drastically different.
I think some of them, too, they took the opportunity to just fix a keyword, right? Like, look at Perdita 1 and Perdita 2. There's no reason to ever play Perdita 1 ever again.
Yeah.
But Perdita 2 is just so amazing, and the play style is going to be much, much better. So I think they took the opportunity to fix some keywords as far as giving them something playable. But for the large part, I think there's a lot of variety in the gameplay between the two Masters.
Well, and we've already seen, right, that like some of these Masters that they fixed are potentially going to, for in the second title, are potentially going to be, errated up next year, maybe, like Wong and Raspy were. So that, hopefully these ones that you're looking at that you'll only ever take Perdita 2, maybe in the next year or so we'll get a boost, and then you can really look at we can hopefully get most of these titles kind of on the same level of like picking for the pool instead of I always take Perdita 2 or I always take Yuri 2 or...
Yeah.
Some people are just in that awesome space where it's like, well, I could play Karai 1 or I could play Karai 2, chances are pretty good I'm going to win either way. So.
Right. Because it's Karai.
Karai might be too powerful. Karai 2 is probably overpowered and needs a little bit of a readjustment.
I would be okay if they hadn't dropped Gwison as well.
Yeah, and I think when we did an episode on Karai 2 before they dropped Gwison, and we said like she's fine unless if she had something that could take the hit for her, because her big downside is that she is very soft. She's very easy to kill, but now she has something that can take the hit for her.
I think Gwison shows up. At least you don't get vengeance when you take the hit now. Thank goodness.
There is that.
Gwison are a maddening model to play.
Oh yeah,
God.
Speaking of Karai, and this brings me to a little bit of a soapbox, but my first game, which was kind of a game of note, I played Karai, and I played her into what was the pool round 1? It was Turf War, which I've always said that is the one thing I wouldn't play Karai 2 into is Turf War, and I did. And the reason I did is because I got to my table and it was covered with impassable walls and tiny forests. It was just a really densely covered table. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take Karai because I'm going to ignore all of this. And that is a huge advantage, even though, she gives up those Turf War markers so easily because she summons 3-point minions. But it ended up working out really well. I ended up winning the game. And I would say a big part of that was because I had the mobility to ignore all of that terrain, which brings me to my soapbox moment. Every time you post a picture of of a Malifaux table on the Weird Forum, you're always going to get someone who complains about something on that table. There's not enough terrain. It's too spread out. It's too thick. There's not enough of X, Y, or Z. And I totally disagree. I feel like having tables that actually favor one thing over another is good because that is an element of the strategy involved, is picking the right crew for the table you're on. And, some people might argue, well, I've only got these 3 masters. Well, the game's not designed for you to only have 3 masters. It's designed for you to have a faction. So it's designed with this in mind, that if you're playing on a table with a bunch of impassable, you're going to play the thing that is advantageous on that table.
I think it can be a balance too, though. Like, you don't want a table that is like 70% hazardous, right? Like,
well, yeah.
Like and I think the same thing goes to blocking too. Like, if the entire board is nothing but blocking and there's not any good lanes at all, like, I think every crew should be playable on the lane on the board, but I think there should be an advantage to bringing, or it's possible to have an advantage to one specific crew, and that's okay. But like, you don't want a board where you literally have no chance to ever put Euripides on the board, right? Like,
yeah,
But
I think that particular issue is baked right into the rules, because I think you're always supposed to leave a 50 millimeter opening between pieces of terrain. But I get your point, which is, you should be able to play on the table. Like, I don't think you should have a table that has like rivers, running down the center line or dividing up people's deployment zones or anything like that. But I think it is more interesting when tables are not neutral, when it's not just, this perfect balance of each type of terrain, and it should have an impact on the game.
I agree.
And it's something that people don't really talk about as much. We talk about lists and about model interactions. We don't talk so much as a community about, well, how does this actually matter when there's terrain on the board?
I agree. I played a game, a break the line game, where my opponent played Parker, and like, his goal, like, he had to run around all of this stuff to get to the break the line markers, and it forced him to split his crew apart, which made it so much easier for me to go after specific little chunks of his crew. And if he had played Daw and just run through the stuff, I would have had a much harder time.
I think you also have to consider a lot of times when tournament tables are set up, it's almost like they're completely symmetrical. It's like, okay, well, I have this one piece of concealing terrain here, so I have to have one on the other side. I have this one piece of impassable here, I have to have one on the other side. And I think that's problematic because it takes away that very first initial benefit of being like attacker, being able to pick where you're going to deploy and making it a positive thing for you and a negative thing for your opponent. Like, I know if I'm playing a game, I'm always wanting to be the defender. If the tables are going to be symmetrical like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the four of us were probably the four that put the terrain out on those boards for the most part. So if there were any problems, it's on us.
Yeah, it's that's something that I've fallen into the trap of making very symmetrical boards at many events that I've done, and even just like playing games at home, on my gaming table in the basement. And that's something that I feel like this tournament I feel like did help me kind of break out of that a little bit. I mean, obviously we set up most of the tables. Some of them were very symmetrical, but I feel like we did a better job at making sure that there was some more variety in the table builds. And I liked it. I really did. To Adam's point, I think that it does make for a more interesting game. You can go too far in one direction and end up setting up a deployment zone that's basically unusable for one player, and then the attacker just chooses the better side and the defender gets screwed.
The other problem with that whole idea that, there should be an advantage to being the attacker because you're picking the better side. There's also like how often do any of you actually make your opponent switch sides of the table with you? Like, there's a sort of table etiquette where you don't do that. I would never do that. Unless maybe I was on table 1 in the last round of a tournament. Other than that, like, I would just never do it. It just seems like bad table etiquette. So it almost feels like that advantage of being the attacker is already lost because of that, to me at least.
I'm not gonna lie. I one tournament have actually taken and like rotated the map because I really wanted one corner and I couldn't really reach it all that well. I think I was playing with I had like a busted knee or something, so I couldn't like lean across the table as much. So yeah, I had my opponent help me like tilt the map around to where it was to where I wanted it to be for a standard deploy. And everyone was looking at us.
I have no compunction about making my opponent move, and to Maeve's point, I'm always happy to rotate the mat if I need to. That's the benefit of playing on a 3x3 mat instead of a 6x4 table.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Shit like that.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea.
So, I guess we've kind of buried the lead a little bit, but do you guys want to talk about the double master thing?
Here's my hot take.
We go.
Here is my hot take, and I will stand by it. If you look at the top players, right? You look at the top, I would say even as far down as maybe the top like 15 players. If there were no double masters, those same 15 players would be in roughly the same spots no matter what. I don't think the double masters changed how players played. Landon did not play double masters once the entire game. And look at his VP and look at his diff. Like, the man is a machine. He knows
Lynch
his game.
Lynch too is a double master.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying that I genuinely don't like a couple places would have popped up and down because it was such a close tournament. But I don't think double masters or not double masters. I think the only way it would really make a huge difference is if someone was allowed to play double masters and someone else was not allowed to play double masters, then maybe it would make a difference. But I really truly think that the outcome of the tournament would have been very close to the same regardless.
So,
All right.
so
So
using
on the
your
other
own,
side of the coin, I was going to say Adam. Yeah, go ahead.
using your own logic, right? Using your own logic, you're like, well, if everybody was using single masters, I can kind of guess everybody would be the same place, right? Well, if everybody was using double masters, that's also probably true. But if the if the cream of the crop players are playing double masters and nobody else is playing double masters, you kind of get what we got, right? I mean,
Maybe.
ultimately,
I
at the end
mean,
of the
Sam didn't
listen,
play. Okay, I'm listening. Go ahead.
I hate double master. I hate it. I hate the concept of it. I don't think it's good for the game. I think that the whole keyword element of 3 was meant to make you really commit to a keyword, and I think now you're bringing in out of keyword models, and you're bringing in like second masters, and it's just throwing everything off balance again. I think that deviating from that whole the keywords focus that they had when they started 3E is just going completely out the window. Double masters is not inherently broken, but there are a lot of combinations that can be. Like my 5 games I played this weekend for our 2-day event. I played my first game Pandora 1, a single master. I got a tie. I played Zoraida 1 Pandora 2 for the rest of the day. And it it was amazing. Like you can't really do a lot to it, and like there are just certain matchups and there's certain combinations that are just awful for the game.
Yeah, from the top 3 players, literally half of the games were double masters, or half of the selections. Like, so 4 of Adams and 3 of Longdon's. So, I mean, yeah, I get your point that these are good players and, they would be in the top anyway. But I think, to Adam's point, they're good players, and that's why they know that the good thing to do is to take the double master.
But we also talked about how tight this tournament was, and I think if those double masters would have been, you guys said, like they said, they played them the whole time. I think if they were really, really, truly a problem, then the games wouldn't have been nearly the games wouldn't have been nearly as tight, right? Like the people that played double masters would have been pushing that far ahead. And Sam didn't play double masters, Jeff didn't play double masters, Pete didn't play double masters, Brian played double masters once.
I think once. I think Jeff played double masters
against
once
me
as
because
well.
he's an asshole. Played that shill. Ugh,
Yeah, shill
made me
1
mad.
second master. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris didn't play double masters. Owen didn't play double masters. And all of those guys were on day 2 in contention to take podium, be in the top. You know what I mean? So yes, I agree. 2 of the top players played double masters most of the weekend, and obviously they did really well. I played double masters 3 of the rounds. I'm down. I got knocked way down. I agree. There are some that are really frustrating, especially if you've never played them before. And I think that there are obviously some combos that probably need to be looked at a little harder. But I really don't think the standings would have been very different if we just did single masters. If we had just done a single master tournament. That being said, I do like variety, so I do like it when tournaments switch that kind of thing up. So, we play double masters one tournament, the next tournament you go to, there's no double masters kind of thing. It's good for list building. It's good for variety.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know. I feel like your argument can go either way. Like you're saying, like, look how close it was, and that's an indication that it doesn't matter. But you could also say, hey, look how close it is, and look that the second and third place people played mostly double masters. So was it the double master that pushed them that 2 diff points ahead, or that 1 tournament point ahead? Like you can make both arguments.
I think there is something to be said for if if you've never hit that combo before, it could be really like eye-opening. But also the same way, like I had never played Maxine 2 before, and Philly just destroyed me on the first round of like, so, that's the kind of thing that, like,
That's true.
it's when you
I
haven't seen
mean,
it before,
the Zoraida one, Pandora 2, is that what you played every round, Adam?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that thing, and I agree, that's disgusting. Like, if I see that, I am definitely gonna have to, like, matrix my brain around it. But I also, having had a player in our meta that played Zoraida and Dreamer quite a bit, like, I got to the point where I was pretty decent at beating it, even before there were some Dreamer and Zoraida nerfs. So, part of it is familiarity. Part of it is, like, there's other levels. Because you do, like, Nexus 2 is definitely an issue, I think. Nexus 2, and I played it, so I played the filth. I agree, having 3 masters, and when you already start the game with, like, 12 AP,
it's adding. I mean, I think Nexus 2 is fine. It's when you add Ivan on top of that.
Yeah. I mean, I played Cooper 2, and that was pretty gross with it, and I played Ivan 2, and that was pretty gross with it. So I think it's any master added in, honestly.
My second game was against someone, Jason, who played Lynch 2 and Asami.
Yeah, so that's 3 masters roughly.
That is insane.
I agree.
Because you've got 3 masters, and one of those masters is summoning 2 minions every turn. And then you get into this new problem of, hey, we're not going to finish this game. You've got a ridiculous amount of AP. You're getting 2 extra activations every turn.
That is, And that is another issue that I think that needs to be, and it's one thing that I practiced with Nexus kids, because I knew going into this tournament I was going to be playing with more models than just about anybody else. I routinely have between 9 and 12 models on the board at the beginning of the game. And I don't play very aggressive. I tend to play very control-y, very cagey. So I knew that I would probably still have 8 or 9 models left, and I wasn't killing many of their models. So I tried to get to where I was playing very, very fast. And I am a very, like, this concise and direct player. I don't hem and haw. I just make decisions and go. And I still finished 2 total games all weekend, 3 total games all weekend. And, like, I think that is a part of it. I know is new stuff. Everybody's looking at new stuff. Everybody's trying to figure new stuff out. But Malifaux rounds and time is an issue. Like,
yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing.
It's a major issue trying to figure out, like, what that's one of the good things normally about 2 masters is that they have less activation, so you can kind of run in. But when those masters become, and maybe that's something that Weird needs to look into, is no summoning or limited summon. Like, maybe summoning is only when they're the hired master. Like leader only summoning.
Yeah, Adam had actually suggested something similar. Because I agree. I think the biggest problem comes when those masters are summoners and they're bringing in more stuff.
I agree. I think that should be held to leader only.
I mean, realistically, the plentiful restriction differences between leader and non-leader summoning masters are there on paper, but in most games they don't fucking matter.
Right, like, especially with Asami, who's just gonna like nuke her models.
She's gonna
anyway.
blow models up or suicide them in or what have you.
Completely irrelevant with Asami. Yeah,
that's not good.
The only one who it kind of matters with that I can really think of is Sandeep, because you tend to take, if you take him as a second master, you're turning some sort of gammon into a golem. And then you've got the upgrade on one of them, and that means you can only summon one more gammon. So
But that's okay, because you play Sandeep 1, and then you play Rasputina, and then you
Yeah.
give your opponent the worst game they've ever played in their life. Because basically you make a giant wall of pillars and say you score nothing on my side of the board, ever. Like, you just make an ice fortress, and then Rasputina shoots out of the ice fortress, and Sandeep shoots out of the ice fortress, and you
Sandeep 2,
can't
you
touch
mean, right?
one or two. You can
Oh,
send
okay.
just like edge a little windgammon kind of out the edge so Sandeep can shoot around it. I had that happen to me in a Vassal tournament like a year ago, and it was the most demoralizing game I've ever played in my life. I was just like, because I brought Dashel, and I was like, I'm just gonna shoot stuff like boom, and then I was like, there's nothing to shoot.
Well,
What?
now it'll be, next time it happens, it'll be even worse because Raspi's better, so.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, absolutely. That player retired, and that was one of those like after he played that for the whole Vassal tournament, he was like, yeah, this is not fun for me, not fun for my opponent. I'm not
Mhm.
doing that again. Let's not.
Yeah, that's.
If you know but that was also before the reveal had come in. So like in that game, if I had known Raspy was coming, I would have brought somebody who blows up,
Mhm.
and then it would have been a whole different game. So that's taking advantage of that is a big deal. Like, but leader only summons. I think leader only summons needs to be a thing.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea, and it's not one that I had thought of. So
Yeah,
good one.
I think that would take care of most of the issues outside of the Nexus kids. Which, if you're listening and you're playing the Nexus kids for the first time, if you don't focus kill them, ignore them, because if you think you're gonna ping them down, it ain't happening. Like you have to decide a kid needs to die that turn, otherwise it's gonna live. Like, I think I lost a total of 3 kids over 6 games all weekend long.
Yep.
Adam, while you were gone, we were just saying, and I know you had mentioned this before, that the hot fix seems to be make it so that only your leader can summon. Although you did a nasty trick to me in our game. Luckily I figured it out before it screwed me. But claim jump is pick a non-leader, not non-master.
Yeah. So guess
Yeah, I
who's
did it
really
with
awesome
McCabe
at
too,
that?
who has extended reach.
Yeah. I did it with Pandora too, who just moves you away and you can't really
Just
kill
doesn't
her.
care. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. Anyway, my point before Weird kicked me off, and I'm convinced that was Weird sabotaging my computer, is so I understand what Maeve was saying about double masters and stuff like that, but I guess my question is, do you really need double master in the game? Like, does it actually provide any real benefit having it in the game at all, or is it just kind of like a distraction and just kind of I don't want to say it's a money grab, but is it just kind of like a way to get people to branch out by like, oh, I have these 2 masters and now I can use both of them in this game, right? Like, I just don't think that double master adds anything to the health of the game. I think it can only ever hurt it.
It's fun for me because I am a weird synergy, always looking for that crazy, like, what insane stuff can I do? And especially with like explorers more than any other faction I've played, I've gravitated towards double master, um, just because the rest of the faction is so bad. Like, just hands down, outside of like the top level quality models, the rest of the faction is terrible. So I keep looking to double masters to make or to make explorers playable for me.
Yeah, and I know that one thing that people have been talking about with explorers, when they were the super new hotness and everybody was saying they were super busted, was, well, one of the cute, or one of the counter picks to these strong explorers models is taking a second master. Some people were saying that you basically had to take a second master to win games against them. I always thought that was a bit of an overstatement.
That seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know that I
doesn't.
agree with that.
I don't agree with it, but that seemed to be the talk on the internet for a while. But now that Burns is out and there's so much more variety and some some keywords have gotten significant power level bumps. I don't really feel like that's the case anymore at all, and I don't think that opinion's wrong. Usually, I'm liberal with suggestion, but
I don't necessarily have a problem with the power level of explorers. I mean, every faction is going to have like 2 to 3 masters that are going to be the tops, and every faction is going to have like the 2 or 3 masters that are on the bottom, and everybody else is kind of in the middle. Like we know what explorers are. It's Ivan, it's Nexus, it's Jensa, right? But like, I mean, it's the same for every other faction. So that in and of itself isn't like what was making it ball busting. I think it was just there were certain things that were too good, and I get it. They're new, and a lot of the newness is what makes them problematic because you haven't experienced them, and like everything, experiencing things is the way you learn how to beat it. But I think even then, like some of the stuff that was coming out when it was coming out, when we were looking at it objectively, it was really, really, really good. Like you're looking at
the problem is though that the good is really good. The good is fantastic. The rest is not good. Like there is not a solid beater minion in that entire faction.
Brocken are pretty good, huh?
Brocken are speed 4. Like they're good if they're summoned.
They don't even really do that much damage.
Right.
I mean,
they're good if they're good if they're summoned. You'll never hire one, and if like harpooners are not great. Like I can't think of a single explorer's minion that like is in the 7 to 9 range that as a player I'm like, yeah, these guys are gonna straight up win me the game.
Botanists are really good.
Botanists are pretty good. I do like botanists, but they don't do damage, right? They're not what do? They stick around, and that's probably their claim to fame. They can just stick around.
I mean, sticking around and moving quick are how you win games, though.
I mean, sure.
I'll tell you this: that Zoraida 1 Pandora 2 combo doesn't kill much, but it moves everything all over the place.
Well, and I mean, once again, the hotfix, taking the summon away from Pandora 2 would probably make me feel a lot better. Just because summoning sorrows, like even playing Pandora 2 on her own, dropping a sorrow into the middle of people's shit is awful. Like it feels so bad as the other player because now you've got to get rid of this thing that is not super easy to get rid of. And every time you're activating, it's pinging and healing, and like it just creates such a slog in the middle that like as the second master, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I think even without the summoning, she's still gonna be a ball buster. Just because I understand like the summons like the thing that you look at and it's like, oh, she gets summoned, that's awesome. But I mean, she's moving models all over the place. She's making them count as hazardous terrain. She's switching around all the conditions that are out there. I mean, the summoning, at least when I'm playing her, is cool, and it's like when it's useful. But I'm not even summoning with her every turn. It's just that crew is just all board control all the time. I can move your entire crew back from what you did moving them up between Zoraida obeying and her just pushing them. So ultimately, I just don't know if Double Master is healthy for the game. I don't know if I think it creates problems with design space because now you also have to look at, well, what if you combine this master with this master, or especially with a lot of the Malifaux Burns masters, not a lot of them have that leader only ability.
I was very surprised by that. Honestly, I was really surprised that we didn't see, and I think that would be a good fix because Weird. I mean, like. Even early in the 3E beta, Weird was like, this is a thing we want and we're keeping it. So a lot of people said, okay, but we hate this. So it didn't get a lot of testing internally. Like everybody was like, we hate this. We're just not going to do it. We're just, we're not going to look at it at all. So coming out of the gate, like it already was kind of at a deficit because it didn't get as much appreciation. And then like of course the same thing happened in Malifaux Burns. There wasn't enough there wasn't a lot of like looking outside and looking at like outside keywords and
Yeah, especially since a huge chunk of the player base is overseas and they don't even play with Double Master. Like
Yeah.
they refuse to do it.
I know.
So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's just us being stubborn or behind the ball, but that's my take on it. I don't think it adds anything to the game. I think it only provides ways to take away from it.
Yeah, I think that I'm firmly on the fence on this one. I haven't decided what my opinion
Shocking.
is either way. Yeah, I know, right? For anybody that doesn't know me, that's my personality in a nutshell right there. I am leaning away from it. I don't personally play very much Double Master. I think I've taken Zip as a second master 3 or 4 times ever. I don't really feel like it's something that I really need, and that may just be indicative of the lack of synergies between different Bayou masters, or maybe I'm just not seeing it. But yeah, we'll see.
I'd say I'm pretty against it, but I'm more against the idea of players banning things outside of the rules. I don't want Malifaux to turn into what Warhammer 8th edition was at the end, where there's literally a 30-page PDF of player-made rules because the game can't get the rules right. So as much as I'm not a fan of Double Masters, I don't want to see people just saying you can't play that at my tournament.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably wrong, but maybe I'm not. Is Double Master baked into Gaining Grounds, or is it like so? Could they just make Single Master the norm and Double Master be a variant?
Yeah,
Yep,
they could. I mean, right now it is the norm, and singles is one of the variants that is one master only. But
Okay.
they could certainly swap that,
Well, I think that needs to switch.
and that's
Personally.
reasonable. I think that's reasonable.
I mean, I would be okay with that. Like, honestly, if they didn't, like, if I couldn't use Double Masters, I would be okay with it. I just probably wouldn't play Explorers again.
And you know what?
Because-
I'll tell you this. There are some factions that benefit from Double Master more than others.
Mhm.
Would anybody disagree with me?
No, for
I
sure.
could play Bayou for years and never play Double Master and be fine.
So that being said, just being able to play Double Master is already setting some kind of disparity as far as being equal, as far as balance, because there are some that have just amazing combos and there are some that do not. Whereas if you just played Single Master, you never have to worry about that ever coming up.
But to me, honestly, I feel like Explorers, I need to play Double Masters because the rest of it doesn't, like, in order to be competitive, I feel like I almost need to play Double Masters with Explorers.
Interesting. I haven't delved far enough into Explorers to make that call. I mean, I've really only played Ivan. I've played a boatload of Ivan, but I've never felt the need to hire a second master into that crew. And I think I'm one of the weirdos that just tends to play that crew very in keyword. Like, I don't really take out of keyword stuff. But I know that's not the norm.
Well, and that's my play style too, is that, I always look for, like, weird interactions and synergies, and I get that usually in the keyword or going, like, slightly out of the keyword in Bayou, but I don't get as much of that in keyword in Nexus, or not in Nexus and Explorers. So, I'm
Maeve,
and
you
like
need to play Rezzers. They've got so much filthy stuff.
I have all the Rezzers. I don't have Thunders. That's the only faction I don't have at this point. I have an issue.
Rezzers have
problem.
so much janky, weird combo stuff you can do. It's fun.
I don't want Maeve to play Rezzers.
But it's the same way with Guild. Like, Guild is very straightforward to me. It's fun. It's fun enough, but Guild is much more fun when I play Double Masters.
Fair enough. Well, we've been going for quite a while on this. Let's kind of move on. We'll just wrap it up. Rather than going through a full tournament recap, because we're edging on 2 hours in recording here. Let's just go through each one of us and just mention kind of our one big standout game for the weekend, and that could be during Booty and Plunder, or it could be during the MCCI. Jake, why don't you go first?
Yeah. Well, I think my most fun game was actually my game against Adam. because I don't know, we always have really tight games that come down to sort of last activation. And he played Zoraida and Pandora. And I actually did something really weird because I knew he was going to do Zoraida Pandora, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to lose this game. So I actually went with Shtuk 2, which was fun.
That was such a dirty game.
What's that?
That was such a dirty game.
It was a dirty game. Yeah, it was fun. I took pretty much a complete anti-tech list.
Yeah, he just pretty much took an entire crew that like was on. I'd be on negatives every time I attacked it with a willpower attack.
I had him on double negatives most of the time.
That's funny.
But I still lost.
Good job, Jake.
Yeah,
that was a crazy game. Crazy game. And then you had what's her face?
Anna Lovelace.
Yeah, Anna Lovelace
to
just
shut down Pandora's summons.
Yeah, you're not summoning anything. Get out of here. You know, it was a really good game. Yeah, I think my favorite game I played Joel. I want to say round 4, and he brought Hoffman 2 that I didn't have a ton of experience against, but I know that the Hoffman 2 was the boogeyman for a while with the irreducible damage and the pylons and stuff. So I thought I would be really smart with the poltergeist and destroying the pylons, and then he just juked me and ran Hoffman all over the board. It was just like using Hoffman to pick up markers because Hoffman has bulldoze and he just runs through terrain. And I was like, motherfucker, this guy, he's scheming with Hoffman. And I like set up the whole game like terrified of Hoffman. And like there was this big jam in the corner. It was actually just a solid game. But that's, again, my board control ended up being able to help me swing that one just by moving stuff because I wasn't killing anything. Even just like by plinking it and everything, because he would just heal it all back up. But yeah, that was just a really great game. He's a great player, and we just learned a lot about each other's crews that game.
Nice, awesome. How about you, Maeve?
Well, mine I think was my round 2. I was coming off of a Feely just. I had the worst round 1 game, the worst game, and I bitched about it all weekend, so everybody heard it. It was just the worst. So coming in, I was like, man, I'm just gonna play this list that I really wanted to play. I don't even care what they're playing. I'm just going to try it out. And Chris O'Brien happened to be a really fantastic opponent. Like he took the loss like a champ, especially because it degenerated very quickly out of his control. But I was looking through all of Explorers trying to figure out what weird, janky, stupid shit I could do. And I realized that the shambling nests are beasts. And then I looked at Cooper 2, and I was like, oh, that's rude. That is so rude. So I brought, he brought Parker 1, and I brought the kids, the Archivist, of course, Cooper 2, a sandworm, and the goo. And yeah, it was dumb. On turn
Monster
1,
Mash.
On turn 1, he has to run all the way around to get to one of the break the line markers with poor Parker. And I had already parked the goo pretty close, so I went initiative on turn 2, jet the goo in, eat Parker, and then he black jokers to get Parker out.
Oh,
and then
no.
The next turn, he has to ditch all of his cards because I got one of the nests in on Mad Dog. And so Cooper was shooting Mad Dog, ditching a card, having the nest hit him, putting a parasite token on him. So like Mad Dog had like 4 parasite tokens by the end of the turn. And then the sandworm popped up next to Mad Dog. And with that many parasite tokens on him, like that was my vendetta target too. Mad Dog didn't make it through the rest of that turn. And then poor Parker, he had no cards left in hand. So he goes and flips a 2 to get Parker out. Parker doesn't get out of the goo till like turn 4. And most of his crew is dead by that point. Like, and Chris was great. Like he was having a great time the whole time, despite the fact that like it was just it was a brutal combo, and I was just really glad that worked, and at the same time, I was kind of like, am I the asshole? I think I'm the asshole here.
Yeah, Chris O'Brien is one of my favorite opponents. We've played against each other numerous times over the course of the years, and I did get a chance to play against him as the ringer in one of the rounds of Booty and Plunder, and that was a great game too. He's just a true gentleman, and
It was a lot of fun. We had a great time and laughing about poor Parker's misfortune stuck in the goo.
mm-hmm.
I played plenty of Warhammer games against Chris, but I don't think I've played Malifaux against him ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I always tend to. This is like the first tournament in like years that I didn't get a game in against Obese. But he's not even just like a good like Malifaux player community guy. He's just like a good person overall. He's just like one of the greats. Obese is awesome. He's a legend.
I think the other person that really deserves a shout out for just being probably one of the most awesome people in Malifaux is John Goldborn. Like, that dude is at every tournament. He is just a great opponent. He doesn't care if he wins. He doesn't care if he loses. He's there to play games and have fun. I think he played an entire tournament with Shenlong last year where he did a single point of damage accidentally. Like, he accidentally did a point of damage. Like, his whole goal was to go in and score as many points as he can without killing any models. And he did.
Yeah. And he's a great player, too. I mean, he played Shenlong 2. I think he played a mix of Shen 1 and Shen 2 this tournament. And, I mean, he had just come off of the LVO. He was there the weekend prior to this event. And he still ended up coming in just shy of top 10. I mean, he finished up in 13th place.
Yeah.
And the guy's a machine. He really is. He's a great
and he's
player,
a great guy. He's just one of the
Yeah.
best opponents you're ever going to play. Like, he is friendly. He's laid back. He's talkative. He's just a very cool player. Very chill guy.
Definitely. Big shout outs to John G. So I would say my favorite game of the tournament was probably my round 3 of the MCCI against Jeff from the Capital City crew. I played against Jeff a couple of times over the course of the years, but it had been a long time. And I really enjoyed it because it was the first time that I've played against Nexus of any sort. We just don't have any Nexus players in the area. I don't really play them on Vassal. I haven't run into them on Vassal, I should say. And so all I had to go on was mental prep ahead of time, trying to figure out how to deal with them. And not only did he play Nexus, but he played Nexus 2, which I barely even read anything about. So I had to give myself a quick crash course while we were setting up. He played a super unusual crew. It had 15 models in it. It was like, yeah, I know, right? I thought you'd like that. It was like Nexus, the 3 Nexus kids, the Shambling Nests, of course, Winston Finnegan, the Archivist, Meredith Stanley, Night Silk Creeper, and like 5 eyes and ears.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It was literally he had like one of the Nexus kids and Meredith Stanley and all the eyes and ears shambling across one edge of the table like a zombie horde, just like overtaking the break the line markers over there and dropping stuff for spread them out. Very, very cool game. I got a chance to kind of stretch my brain a little bit. Which is really saying something for round 3 at the end of a team tournament. Usually you're a little cooked at that point. He was a very gracious opponent, even given the absolutely absurd flips that I was getting. I was playing Ophelia 1 and just slowly trying to grind my way through all the models that he was putting on the table. And as Adam can attest, I think he's probably borne the brunt of this. I seem to have ridiculous luck flipping into moderates and severes on like double and triple negative flips. And there was one point in the game in round 3 where Jeff said, if you flip one more severe, I'm going to walk away from this table. And then I flipped 3 severes on a double negative damage flip. I think I flipped the Red Joker, flipped or cheated the Red Joker for damage, something like 5 times that game. I think it came up twice in one turn at one point, not for damage both times, but he took it all in stride. I mean, it was a tough game. He's a great opponent. I had some great luck. He had some pretty good luck at points too. We ended up eking out a draw. He was honest at the end, and he said that I should have won that game because I missed a point on turn one with kicking a break the line marker. I was just a little overzealous with one of my models and didn't go for the point instead. But yeah, it was great. He's a great opponent, and props to Jeff. So, any other closing thoughts from you, gents, before we wrap this bad Larry up? We're going to be probably over 2 hours on this.
Yeah, I'm sure we have some editing.
Oh, I'm sure we do a little bit. You'd be surprised how little stuff gets cut out. It's usually just crosstalk, and I try to leave all of the banter and the nonsense in if I can.
Honestly, though, I think it was a great event. I think you knocked it out of the park, Jesse. Like, I know you and Adam both put in a ton of work into this weekend. So
Jake too.
Jake, yeah,
Jake
absolutely.
Too. Oh yeah, Jake too,
So,
for sure.
it was really awesome to get to come out, hang out with everybody, meet people in person, and overall, tournament or no tournament, that was my goal for this weekend, was to hang out with people, have a great time, get to actually like face to face meet people that I'd only talked with on the internet or talked with on podcasts. And that's what, like, there was no drama. There was a little bit of like, blah, 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 but there was no, like, I have been to tournaments for War Machine where people walked away mad, where people walked away upset, where there were fights at the tables, where people like just got their feelings hurt on a general basis. And we just don't have that in the Malifaux community.
Yeah.
Like, everybody is just cool. And that's awesome. Like, it's a great community.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. A couple of weeks prior to the event, Drew Patton, one of the players in the tournament, he played Bayou. I think he came in like, I don't know, second or third from the bottom. He messaged me and he asked, how is the Malifaux community with new players? I've only got maybe 3 or 4 games under my belt. I feel nervous about coming to an event. Like, people are going to be annoyed with me. I'm going to be slowing things down. And I told him, honestly, it's the best gaming community that I've ever been a part of. I've never known anyone to get frustrated or annoyed with a new player at a tournament. And if anything, people are going to be helpful and, considerate and really just trying to make sure that you learn as much as you can and have the best time possible. And I don't think that there are a lot of other games that have communities that you could say that for.
I mean, and listen, as a trans woman, that was a concern coming in. Like, I was, you're always worried the first time you meet people in person, like, how are people going to react? And it never even, like, by the time I had been there 2 hours, I was like, nope, everything's good, everything's awesome. We're just gonna go do what we do. So I appreciate that, like, 100% to everybody who was there for the weekend, and like, just creating a welcoming community. That's huge. That's huge to keeping players and having good games.
I'll tell you this: I couldn't be any happier with how the weekend turned out. We as a podcast did put in a ton of work into this tournament. I can say I may not financially recover from this. We put a ton into it, but
yeah, we did.
We have to thank our sponsors. They really came in strong for us. Wildland Store on Facebook with a bunch of great terrain. Widget Wizards gave us a bunch of stuff. Miniature Market, Weird Games. Weird sent like a ridiculous amount of prize support, like an insane amount of prize support. And just being able to get all of those podcasters, all those vloggers, all the content creators together. I know that the con was ecstatic. The con loved it. They were big fans that we were able to draw such a large crowd. I'd like to make that number grow next year. And if you're one of those podcasts or anything over across the pond, the invite's there. I mean, come across, whoop our ass. I don't care, whatever it is, but like, get over here, and then overall with the 2-day event, Booty and Plunder, I think we were the second largest tournament at the convention.
Yeah.
Behind 40K. So, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. It's a resurgence. Malifaux, I've always said Malifaux is largely a competitive game. You can play it beer and pretzels, but I think it's meant for competitive play. And to really make it thrive, you really need those tournaments. You need those conventions. I mean, I miss the hell out of conventions. A lot of the fun is what happens after the games. Like when we're playing Werewolf and Jake's throwing up in the bathroom, that kind of stuff. That's where all the fun is. And you miss all of that. So you can play Vassal to like your fingers bleed, but it's not the same. And so I was glad to get a lot of that in-person interaction again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just
Saturday night was very fun. Maybe I should have had 2 or 3 less drinks, but it was a lot of fun. And just adding to that, I mean, the getting out and doing cons and doing big tournaments at cons, it really does draw in new players. I know a lot of guys who used to play Warhammer Fantasy competitively go to all the GTs, and I saw a lot of them this weekend, which was really cool. They were mostly there to play like Lord of the Rings or 40K or whatever, but so many of them like came over and they were like, wow, Malifaux's really picking up. This looks really interesting, and so many of them expressed interest in getting into Malifaux because, I mean, as we know, the destruction of 8th edition was the best thing that could happen to Weird. and a lot of people went to different games, but I think a lot of those people are looking for that kind of competitive game that still has a good following of players that can both be competitive and compassionate at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say my kind of closing thoughts are, I can't wait to do it again. The con already approached me even before the weekend was out, the convention management, and said that they were really hoping that we would put it on the same events again next year. I told them I absolutely plan to. They were so impressed with the turnout and with the level of organization with the events. They said that, every time they would come down to check in, they're used to going to events and having the organizers say, yeah, we really need this, or this table's not working, we need to swap this out, or, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. And we just always kind of had things handled. The players were getting along, the tournaments were running on schedule, everything was just moving. And they said not only would they like to see us come back next year, but they're interested in talking to us about moving it to a ticketed event, which does mean that there are some additional entry fees for the event, but there are a substantial number of benefits that we get for that, and they only have a certain number of ticketed events at the convention. So we'd be right up there with like the War Machine event and the 40K event, where they'd be able to provide us with even more space if we needed it. They'd be able to provide us with a substantial amount of prize support along with a bunch of other benefits. So that's really exciting to be able to run events for the first time at this con and have it go off so well that they not only want to see us back, but want to move us to a marquee spot on the card is humbling, to say the least.
And that was our goal. And that was our goal coming in. When coming into this event, Jesse and I were like, we want to make this a marquee event. This is a con that's lost a chunk of its player base just because of the hit of War Machine or whatever it may be. And we think that there's a really great opportunity for us to really push Malifaux and make this into like this big spotlight event that's going to get the eyes from across the player base. And it was. And a big shout out to those guys from Saugus. Bringing in tables and terrain, between all of us and then with them on top, we had tons of terrain. None of the tables were shabby at all. And it was just a really great event. So I couldn't ask for anything more.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that'll probably about wrap it up. I want to thank all 3 of you for joining us. I think this was a great episode. Great conversations. Hopefully not too boring. But as always, folks, keep your conversations boring and stay weird. Before we go any further, Jake, your mic sounds super fucking weird right now. It's like kind of tin canny. And is anybody else getting that?
Yeah,
I got
am
it too.
Hello.
Yeah.
That made it worse.
It's the same. It sounded way better before we started recording.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
It did, huh?
Yeah.
What's this do?
Just start clicking buttons. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Famous last words. What does this do?
How about that?
That still kind of sounds like you're in a hallway.
Anything?
A hallway is a good way to put that.
Do you have
think I
another
figured it out. Can you guys
microphone
hear me
like on
right
your
now?
webcam or something?
We can hear you. It's just kind of quietish. Do you have like two mics hooked up? Maybe. Yeah, like Maeve said.
That's what happened. When I turned my camera on, it defaulted to that mic.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep, that happens to me a lot.
Just turn your camera off.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, it even says on like if I click the little down arrow, it even says that you're using the microphone on your webcam. So there you go. So
There's an edit.
yeah, that's an edit. Holy shit. What the fuck was I talking about?
You can't breathe the stout.
No. Doesn't go down that pipe. Adam, why don't you go ahead?
Why don't you mark this and go with me last because I'm counting them all up right now.
Okay. He's data driven. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how the season develops for sure. It's going to be pretty darn cool. So, Adam, did you finish tabulating your results, sir? Oh, I heard his phone ring.
Guess not.
Guess
you know what I
He just
saw?
raised his hand too. As always, folks, stay weird, keep your conversations boring, and I fucked that up. Hold on. I didn't edit. So, as always, folks, keep your conversations boring, and I fucked it up again. God damn it. I'm a fucking loser.
Tired?